is fairly high, and the poor background family, school children, school age population have a hard time in getting a good quality education. So how the Indonesian government introduced the so-called package ABC, that is equivalent to the international standard of the school education. And also she shared some of the quality assurance system that the Indonesian government also had. So let me introduce our second speaker of the plenary. Our second speaker is Ms. Ambat, the Assistant Secretary for the Alternative Learning System and Education Assessment. She's from Philippine Department of Education. Under Ms. Ambat's leadership, the Republic of Philippines reformed the curriculum, learning delivery, learning resources, and assessment to level up the alternative learning system of Philippines. And they also the strong legislation regarding the quality assurance. She is working very closely with the international partners like Asian Development Bank and KOICA from Korea, and also UNESCO, UNICEF, USAID, World Bank, and also the private sectors. The floor is yours, Ms. Ambat.
Hello, good morning. I'm happy to be sharing with all of you today what the Philippines has been doing in terms of upskilling and reskilling adults. So with the new administration, which came in last year, the Philippine Development Plan envisions that by 2028, Filipinos will be smart and innovative, with the learning poverty substantially addressed. Filipino learners have access to high-quality, lifelong learning opportunities that develop adequate competencies and character qualities, which will allow them to thrive in society and in the world of work. So the Philippine government recognizes how critical lifelong learning is, and that it will be instrumental in ensuring that our population will thrive, whatever challenges and opportunities that will come along the way in the future. So just to share with you the strategic framework to improve education and lifelong learning, and as you can see on your screen, this is good news now because the Philippines has expanded its view of lifelong learning to not just be confined to tech-voc education. It already recognized that lifelong learning, of course, encompasses basic education, TVET, higher education, and that it involves other stakeholders than the education agencies that we have now in the country. So the framework says that we are working towards developing and protecting the capabilities of individuals and families, and this is in relation to promotion of human and social development. We are looking at transformative lifelong learning opportunities for all, and below each pillar are the strategies that we will do to achieve the goal of developing and protecting capabilities of individuals and families. I will zero in on one of the strategies under basic education, since I am from the agency that handles basic education in the Philippines. So we are saying that we will develop and implement catch-up programs to address learning losses. Currently, the education agencies in the country have been busy because of the results of recent international assessments. Our PISA results, wherein the Philippines placed last when you talk of reading, and then second to the last when you talk of mathematics, is a cause of concern. And as we move during, and from the pandemic, as we were doing our assessments after the school closures, we are learning that even some of our learners reach grade 9 without learning how to read, without the competencies, foundational skills that are expected of them. And we recognize that these it is critical for our population to have the foundational skills and for us to develop functional literacy skills in them for them to be able to thrive. And so the strategies to ensure that, of course, aside from those in-school children, for those who are out of school or for those who have not stepped into schools, we are expanding the access to alternative learning system. And of course, we want our kids in school to really stay in school. That's why we are providing social-emotional support and career guidance and guidance counseling for them. I would like to draw your attention to this slide. And of course, the table shows that the older population has relatively lower levels of functional literacy compared to the younger generations. And this will be a hindrance in accessing education, upskilling programs for them, especially in the blended and online learning setup. I've been hearing since yesterday that there are so many platforms that are being set up for upskilling and reskilling adults. But for the Philippines, we really are looking at the data. If we say that a lot of them are still lacking in functional literacy skills, then we have to go back to upskilling them first when you talk of functional literacy before teaching them data analysis and all the ICT skills that are being mentioned. So for ALS, it means that more effort and investments in reaching adult learners who can benefit from the basic literacy and elementary level programs are imperative. So this next table again is from the Functional Literacy Education and Mass Media Survey conducted in 2019. And it shows that 36% of Filipinos who reach junior high school as their highest educational attainment still cannot read, write, and compute and comprehend at varying levels. These individuals can benefit from the ALS program if they are having difficulty completing their formal schooling. For the older ones in this level of education, aside from benefiting on the employment side, undergoing ALS will also help them support the learning of school-going children and youth in their households. As we have seen during the pandemic, the parents were the ones who became teachers, and for those households who didn't have parents that are educated, it was a challenge for the kids to learn as well. So again, as mentioned, we are expanding the alternative learning system to reach the adults, and we have strengthened the transition pathways. In the last few years, we have introduced new programs for them to be upskilled. One is through the academic focused bridging program. So this is available for those adults who graduated high school with the old curriculum, because the higher education institutions are now requiring that they take senior high school courses as well. So ALS is providing that for them so that they can be better prepared for higher education and post-secondary vocational training. For those wanting to set up business, get into entrepreneurship, we have introduced the Be Your Own Boss program, and as well as the work-based learning, which provides hands-on experience or work simulation in learners, which they can apply the competencies and knowledge relevant to their chosen career or work. And for those who are not really interested in getting the basic education diploma, high school diploma, we have been offering functional education and literacy programs for them that would suit their interests and that would make them better citizens, better parents, and better employees. We are also working on really reforming our assessments and certifications for ALS, which is the non-formal education program in the Philippines. So we have introduced micro-certification. In basic education, we are certifying life skills, not skills to do a technical job. So we really called it intentionally micro-certification instead of micro-credentials. And so far, we have had the policy, the rubrics, and how we assess communication skills, teamwork, leadership, and problem solving are now underway, and we are already implementing micro-certification so that our learners who are looking for jobs can have additional certification. Take, for example, if the job vacancy says they need someone who's good in communication, the micro-certification saying what level a learner has in his communication skills would help them in getting the job, or at least additional certification. And we also introduced portfolio assessment as we are veering away from the high-stakes paper and pen test for accreditation and equivalency test. And we have introduced dual certifications, so learners who want to have the basic education diploma as well as the national certification for technical skills are also catered by the ALS program. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the things that we have been doing in the Philippines for upskilling and reskilling of adults through the ALS program. It is one thing for them to be upskilled and for our adults to reskill, but the critical next steps is to ensure that coordination and harmonization among the pillars of capital development sector will be there, because if the other agencies or the labor sector will not recognize the certifications and results of assessments, then it will be a waste. And then we have to operationalize our Philippine qualifications framework and ensure partnership with local international institutions to enhance continuing professional development, career development support, credit transfer schemes and pathways, and equivalency systems set up to facilitate standards, comparability, and professional mobility. So this is a lot of work, but we are steadfast and we will move towards achieving all this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ambat. It's good to hear from you that the Philippine government introduced the lifelong learning as a framework for the national education strategy finally. And also she introduced some of the bright kind of policies that in the name of the micro-certification and the dual certification, and also they have a portfolio assessment for the alternative pathway toward the out-of-school age populations in Philippines. Thank you very much for your presentation. And our third speaker is Mr. Aswin Wihdiyanto. He will present some of the Indonesian approach in detail. He is the officer in charge, Director of Community Education and Special Education, Ministry of Education, Culture and Research and Technology, Republic Indonesia. The floor is yours, Mr.
Okay, thank you. I bring my own timer because too far from here to see the timer. Okay, good morning. I think it's still in the morning. Distinguished panelists, distinguished moderator, and distinguished guests. Okay, before I start my presentation, I want to underline three words, important words that correlate each other. First is about the inclusive, flexibility, and upscaling and reskilling. When we talk about inclusive, it means that no one left behind in education. It's not only about the formal education, it includes non-formal education or maybe informal education, and of course for people with disability and the people who in the disadvantaged condition, such as the people who live in the remote area, in the rural area. And when we talk about flexibility, it means that the learning process must be considered the student condition, the unit education condition, so they can fulfill the best learning process. And when we talk about upskilling and reskilling, it means that we need to fulfill the need of work field. So the education have to create better and better about how to improve the teacher, how to improve the learning process for the student. Okay, let me start about the empowerment and skills on non-formal education in a Merdeka curriculum as Ibu Suharti present before. Okay, the first, I want to tell to us that in non-formal education, especially, we divide the curriculum into big group. For the first group is about the general group subject, and the second one is about the empowerment and skill based on the Pancasila student profile. Sorry, I can tell more about the Pancasila student profile because the time is very short. In the general group contain the subjects that are arranged according to the national education standards and according to the level of formal education, as Ibu Suharti said before, and are subject that must be given to the all student. That's the general group. And the second one is about the Pancasila student profile based empowerment and skill group. Include, this is the important thing, about the occupational functional, vocational skills, professional attitude, and personality, and the independent, entrepreneurial spirit. And in this case, empowerment and skills is very correlated, is very support each other. Empowerment contains competencies to foster about the self-esteem, self-confidence, so that the students are more able to independent in the community and to be the fighter when they join the social life like that. Ministry of Education and Culture has compiled empowerment learning outcome, what we call as capaian pembelajaran, ya, which are used as reference for education unit as targeted competencies. But in the level of operational, education unit can make it more flexible in the teaching learning process, but they need to reach the empowerment learning outcomes that government already make as a standard. And when we talk about the skills are given by taking into account when we talk about the skill, we need to consider about the variation of the potential of existing regional resource, the potential of the condition and a condition of the student. Yeah? So many things that we have to consider when we give the skills, competencies to the student. So the student are able to actualize independence, autonomy, freedom, and creativity in working to fill public space productivity. This is some achievement skill that stipulate in the regulation of Ministry of Education, especially decree of the head of Badan Standard, yes, Standard Bureau in our ministry, is about fashion, culinary, art, agriculture, waste management, capture, fisheries, robotic, and etc. Not only this list of skills, maybe other skills can be run in the operational process, yeah, depend on the need of the unit of education and maybe the need of the work field like that. This is some picture in one of Center for Teaching and Learning Activities, what we call the SPKBM, yeah, some unit of education who give skill, competency to the learners. Carry out, they also collaboration with the private sector. I think this is very important to fulfill the need of the work field, yeah, to match in line what the need in the workplace with the education that we make. 2 minutes more. I think this is the last my presentation. I just want to say that it's more than 1.5 million students who join in non-formal education. So this is very the potential asset for our country. So this is important for government to make sure that education for the non-formal education can give the best for the learners. So when they graduate, they can join the community, join the social life, and become once more as a fighter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Aswin Wihdiyanto. He introduced the two groups of the Indonesian young people. So one is a general group and the other is the empowerment and skills group. And also he outlined some of the skill areas that the Indonesian government is trying to focus on. And from the pictures he showed, I think there's so many workplace-related learning opportunities for the non-formal education participant here in Indonesia. And I was astonished there are more than 1.5 million non-formal education participants there. Wow, it's a big number. Thank you very much. And we have our fourth speaker, Mr. Yeoli Pheow, Executive Director of the Institute of Adult Learning, Singapore.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for this privilege to be able to share with you the Singapore story. Let me start off by saying that SkillsFuture in Singapore promotes lifelong learning as a key strategy for individuals to continually upskill and reskill, to stay current and relevant and employable in a rapid changing economy. The intention here is, of course, as we develop the SkillsFuture framework, we look into the global trends that influence how we should shape our skills future model, including the local market conditions. Especially in Singapore, we have fast aging population. At the same time, looking at what other barriers we have in place, especially when employers are hesitant to come on board. But we want employers to take ownership. And of course, the intention here is to empower lifelong learning skills, training from individuals. They must see progression whenever they come to upgrade themselves. As I mentioned, SkillsFuture is a collective journey in Singapore where individuals are encouraged to make choices that leads to opportunity for personal growth. And that's where I like to say that adult education is very much demand-driven. There must be a proposition for someone to come in to be retrained, to unlearn and relearn. So what we have here is to meet the diverse needs of adult learners, we create a very flexible learning pathway. And that's the intent here is that anybody can get into the system, which means there's a flexible admission policy. Anybody can go through the system because there's a flexible mode of delivery, credit accumulations and transfer. And of course, the intent is when they get out from the system, they can see a transition, an upward progression in why they have come to be retrained or to learn. After all, they're making a lot of opportunity cost situations here. They could have spent time with their family instead of coming for retraining. Of course, look at part-time jobs. So there must be a value proposition why they come on board. At the same time, as part of the skilling and training of people, there must be also opportunities where a particular industry sunset, they are able to transfer their skill sets into another sector. What we have created in Singapore is actually the Singapore Workforce Skills Qualification. It's a national accreditation system with intention for individuals to progress quite quickly. The framework itself is established based on sectoral information. In other words, the different industries comes together, give their views on how it takes, what are the job roles required in order to perform in the particular industry. And then we create pathways for progression. And the intention here is that when individuals come to learn, they build deep skills so that they create a situation where they can see themselves progressing. Of course, in the skills framework, we hope to create a very lean workforce which enhances business competitiveness and, of course, support employment. That's why employers must come on board to support this framework. What we have created is also a very flexible pathway. The intention here is, as I mentioned, the workers come in, there must be a value proposition for them. And if you look at the lower part of it, what we created is courses in line with a progressive work wage model. In other words, there's level 1, and when they complete level 1, they go to level 2. What is then for the workers as they progress to level 2, and that is the technician level. They then, of course, upgrade again and go to the supervisory, the managerial, and of course, the recognition of what they have done prior learning. And if you can see, the qualification is stacked upwards. Each time when they complete a certain level, they see themselves progressing on that platform. It's an open access system. It's individually paced so that the person can come on board, and at sometimes, because of family concern, they may say, sorry, I need to take time off. Yes. Then we stacked it up to say, you've completed this level. When you come back again, we then recognize what you have prior learned and, of course, create the next platform for you to relearn again. And it's modular in nature, and, of course, the most important, it's competency-based. Because at the end of the day, when they come for retraining, they come with the intent that there is a better future for them. Separately, we also created new platforms, which is called the Work-Study Program. The Work-Study Program, of course, is an interesting pathway for those who finish formal education in a government-structured network and still wants to continue to study and at the same time work. And that's where they work and they learn, and at the same time they get paid. Of course, the important here under the work-study framework is that if you look at the bottom line of it, it involves participation of employers. There must be commitment for employers to come on board, and also at the same time help firms to grow talent and retain talent. In the tight labor market situation in Singapore, labor is a talent capital to companies. And so we entice them for the companies to come on board and to take ownership of the training. And the commitment is that they get involved in the training. In other words, it's a structured program where they come on board and courses are offered by the Institute of Higher Learning or even appointed private providers. At the same time, as they learn, they progress in their career path. And hopefully, as they complete each phase of it, they can see progression in their career. And that's what we do under the work-study scheme. Let me say a little bit about where I come from. I'm from the Institute of Adult Learning. Our aim is very clear. As the Institute of Adult Learning in Singapore, our aim is to drive professional development of adult educators and educating what we call training providers. We provide credentialing, all right? At the same time, I must say that the reason why we create this platform is that we have structured programs to train adult educators, but there are many, for whatever reason, cannot go through a formalized adult training framework, and that's where we create master class program. Short, with intent that they quickly be able to transfer knowledge, all right? And one of the things some of you have been talking about, the different languages, if you have not explored, there are a lot of packages out there that actually, as you deliver in English, it can transfer to another language, all right? Look into some of these packages, because on this platform, I do not want to favor any service provider. And of course, you can, and at the same time, the IAL itself conduct research to deepen knowledge, both on the policy level, at the same time on the practice level. I must say that the Institute of Adult Learning is structured into 3 pillars. 1, training of adult educators. 2, doing research that is meaningful, that translate into new job scope or new paradigms of thinking, or maybe even employment of what are the new things, what are the new trends shaping employability. And the third one is, of course, this whole area of promoting education technology. And the intention here under these initiatives, on the right side, on the green part, is to spearhead continuous upskilling and improvement, drive and translate research into real-world solutions, strengthen best practices in the workplace, and that's where we get employers on board, all right? We have a workplace learning program where employers are personally involved in the training of their own talent, and of course, last but not least, lead on the learning transformation through innovation. These are the courses that we have offered at the Institute of Adult Learning. They are available on our website, all right? Networking sessions, full online blended learning, and of course, for key skills area, we have subsidies available to encourage employers to come on board. And of course, there's this skills badge where we say, if you're a professional, you're a C-suite, we do not need you to come for formalized training. We have a truncated version. The main intention is you must know the outcome if you are doing training for any organization. And of course, we have full qualification program. On that note, I just want to close my presentation by thanking the organizers of this event. It's a great conference, and I got the opportunity to meet many of you. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yeoli Pheow. He's a new director of the Institute of Adult Learning Singapore, and he's in vocational and training sector in Singapore for more than 10 years. And he presented some of the very important characteristics of the Singaporean approach to the flexible learning pathway for adults. One is open access, and second is modularized training program, and third is individual pace is respected, and the lastly is it is a competence-based system. It was quite, and we all know that Singapore is a very small number of population comparing with Indonesia, but they have a very thick and deep workforce development process in the national strategies. Our last speaker of this morning is Mary Macauley, program specialist, skilled throughout life, UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. We all know her very much because she's one of the organizers, so she's around us. And the floor is yours, Mary.
Hello, thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Marie Macauley. I'm indeed part of the organizing team today from the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, and I'm happy to talk a little bit to you about recognition of prior learning, and as we call it at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, recognition, validation, accreditation of non-formal and formal learning. I'll refer to it as RVA for this presentation. And the idea is very much to take a little step back from some of these very practical demonstrations of upskilling and reskilling at the national level, and talk a little bit about what RVA, RVA, stands for and contributes to in the context of lifelong learning, and also how does it act as a tool for inclusion, specifically in relation to the work that we're doing at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. So the RVA of learning outcomes acquired in non-formal and informal settings can play a really important role in promoting lifelong learning for all. We define it as a practice that tends to make visible and values the full range of competencies, which includes knowledge, skills, and attitudes that individuals can obtain through various means during different phases of their lives and across all contexts. So in this particular respect, we see RVA as a key for establishing and facilitating flexible learning pathways between non-formal and formal learning settings, as well as between education, training, and work. We see it as a tool that enables learners to seamlessly progress through education, different education levels and fields, both vertically and horizontally. I'll also explore a little bit further in my presentation why we see it as a tool for inclusion. One of our flagship publications, Embracing a Culture of Lifelong Learning, highlights the significance and the important role of RVA in promoting lifelong learning. In fact, one of the key action points is recognizing the holistic nature of lifelong learning, and that is to integrate recognition, validation, accreditation mechanisms as essential for creating a flexible learning system that can recognize the results of non-formal and formal learning. These procedures tend to facilitate those who don't typically meet the conventional entry requirements or who wish to re-enter education at a later stage in life. We've heard a few of these examples already from panelists who are both here, but those who also have presented for the first few meetings and sessions that we've heard about today. We also see RVA as a tool to integrate wider sections of the population into a more open, homogeneous, and flexible education and training system, contributing to a more inclusive society. One of the key messages, the ninth, in fact, of this publication, is reorganizing and revitalizing learning in the workplace. And the idea here is that some of the action points recognize the various outcomes of learning in the workplace. RVA tend to be essential for promoting learning in the workplace, but where they exist, they can also often be too cumbersome. So we really promote the simplification of RVA processes for workplace learning, much of which involves non-formal and informal learning, ensuring also that there are national RVA frameworks in place tied to the National Qualifications Framework when possible, that are well communicated and implemented by employers. Improved workplace RVA procedures can also lead, generally speaking, to a greater employee empowerment, making some of the skills more visible but also transferable down the line. RVA really can fulfill different functions. We try to group them here into three broad groups. We see it as an enabler to navigate flexible learning pathways, transitioning between work and higher education, for example. We also see RVA as, when integrated into broader education and training system, as supporting skills improvement and requalification, having a very clear and positive impact on the labor market, on national economies, by promoting skills matching and addressing skills gap, leading also to increased productivity and economic benefits. Finally, we see it as playing a crucial role in supporting lifelong learning for marginalized groups, including migrants and refugees. And so we see this as particularly important, mostly because of the sheer number of migrants and refugees around the world. The IOM, the International Organization for Migration, World Migration Report 2022, estimates that as of 2020, we were around 281 million migrants worldwide, and equally, the most recent global trends data from the UNHCR shows that global displacement also continues to rise, and at the end of 2022, 108.4 million persons were forcibly displaced worldwide for different reasons: conflict, violence, human rights violation, and more. And yesterday in the workshop on just transitions, we also heard that in 2020, 30.7 million people were displaced by natural disaster. Specifically in Asia and the Pacific alone, we heard that 21.3 million people were displaced, making it the region that is most impacted by natural disasters. And in this context, we also see really establishing mechanisms to recognize prior learning and competencies of migrants and refugees really as key for securing a sustainable but also a more inclusive future for all. There are different types of efforts being made for including RVA mechanisms, but mostly this is in the discourse rather than in the implementation. So in a survey conducted last year by UNESCO and the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, we analyzed that around 70% of the objectives of national qualifications framework that we surveyed, about 100 national qualifications framework worldwide, wish to enable recognition and validation of non-formal and formal learning. However, the practice of actually enabling RVA systems within national qualifications framework is not very much in place. So RVA tends to be separate from national qualifications framework, despite the interest of countries to actually embed it into the system. There are different projects, but I don't have time to get into that, that are attempting to do this work. So in the context of RVA, UIL, the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, has been working on the topic of RVA for quite a long time, and with a recent focus on promoting the inclusion of these marginalized groups I just mentioned, including migrants and refugees. Currently, we're engaged in a large research project on RVA and adaptive learning pathways, flexible learning pathways, with a particular emphasis on migrants and refugees, looking to develop and actually soon to release a literature review on this topic, a thematic research report, as well as an online course which is currently ongoing. And the main objective is very much to support countries around the world in developing and implementing, but also enhancing systems for recognition of prior learning, recognition, validation, accreditation of prior learning, to make those skills and competencies visible for migrants and refugees in order to improve their employment, but also their well-being and their active engagement in society. I will go quickly through, just to briefly mention that our in-depth literature review research has highlighted 4 key success factors for creating inclusive RVA systems. Firstly, looking at establishing cohesion among sectors and stakeholders is quite crucial, and that can be achieved through a robust legal framework that supports RVA for citizens, for all citizens, but also for migrants and refugees, along with other marginalized groups. This can really encourage collaboration, integration of systems for RVA into the labor market, and also sectors as well as education sectors. Second point is the integration of formal, non-formal, and formal learning outcomes, which is quite essential. Thirdly, empowering migrants and refugees through culturally informed and flexible prior learning assessments, which can include also tech-enabled approach. We heard a lot about digital tools at our disposal. This can apply to to the RVA mechanisms. And finally, RVA outreach measures such as counselor, career guidance, accessible gaps training for migrants and refugees are crucial. And data collection analysis can also, in this field, further enhance RVA systems. My time is up, but I will just briefly scroll through just to let you know that looking ahead, RVA is really poised to assume a increasingly significant role in nurturing lifelong learning, particularly as mobility, demographic shifts and transitions become more pronounced. And we really see RVA as encompassing all forms of learning outcomes, regardless of where they were attained, and supporting those learning outcomes. So to facilitate this progress, we would like to also make sure that RVA can consider new learning modalities, such as the attainment of microcredits, micro-certifications, ensure various institutions are also adapting to the evolutionary and evolving educational landscape, including higher education institutions, which we'll talk a little bit more today about in workshop 4.1. So with that, I'd like to thank you and wishing you a great rest of the conference.
Thank you, Mari. She kind of introduced what RBA is and what we can do with the RBA as a tool for the flexible learning pathway. And she also outlined some of the very important UIL's new book on RBA. It was recently launched. I was in the Zoom meeting for the launching ceremony. And also RBA is very important to connect workplace and learning outcomes, and also the national framework, qualification frameworks. So thank you, Mari, for your presentation. Is there anyone who has a burning question? Because I got assigned there's no question from the floor, but is there anyone who has a question? Okay, then I have a simple two questions to Ms. Suharti, because I wonder what are the primary challenges faced when implementing flexible learning pathway for upskilling and reskilling, specifically in the context of adult education in Indonesia?
It is very challenging, of course. First, because we have to provide the skills that is needed. This is relevant to the job markets. And the second, the challenge in terms of the provisions of resource. I believe it is also occur in other countries, so that we have to prioritize which groups that is feasible to be trained or retrained. And probably I need to add some information that because the Philippines also present about the functional literacy. Indonesia also provide the functional literacy programs. It's focused on four, I call it, areas. Mostly for women, because women are more likely to be illiterate, and elderly, 45 years and above, those living in the remote areas, and the poor. So we still have programs also under Aswin. And another challenge is that sometimes, as mentioned by Pak Aulia this morning, some people, they don't know what they don't know. Some people think that they have enough education. Some people perceive that they do have enough skill. So that we also promote the programs, encouraging people to apply for the programs. And we make the applications easier. We have an online platforms. In this case, we connect the online system for the non-formal educations with the education data system, so that those who are already in the system, in the formal system, cannot apply for the non-formal, like the one that I mentioned, the entrepreneurial trainings and also the occupational trainings. We hope we can provide all. We wish we could provide the access for all, but the resource make it impossible, so that we have to prioritize who's need more than the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swarty. And we have a, do you have a question? Okay.
Thank you. We learned how to use this microphone, but it didn't work. So I have a quick question for Mr. Yeo from Singapore. It's very interesting that you have a program for the adult education educators professional development program. I just want to know, I have two questions actually. First, who qualifies the adult educators? Is it the government or is it institutional qualification? So that's my first question. And the second question is, now I know Singapore has a lot of foreign workers. Are they also entitled to have these opportunities for their adult learning in your center? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Firstly, anyone who wants to be an adult educator can enroll to be an adult educator. They will have to go through formal training organized by the Institute of Adult Learning. There's a structure in place. To qualify to teach in the adult educator space, you need a certificate to start with. The certificate normally stretches for about 3 months, which covers 5 core modules. Once you complete the 5 core modules, we will certify you and qualify you to be suitable to be teaching in the adult educator space. Now, by the way, I just want to qualify that it also covers the universities and the polytechnics are exempted from this because they have their own training program, because the universities and the polytechnics also go into the adult educator space. We do have micro-learning courses to make sure that there's a value for engagement for university professors handling adult learners, because adult learners are different from school leavers who goes into university to get a degree. The next question is coming to this about foreign workers working in Singapore. Let me say that all foreign workers, before they come into Singapore, are qualified. In other words, we only attract foreign workers who are qualified to do a certain task. It's deliberate. If they are trained in a certain task in a certain country and we need them, we will qualify them to make sure that they have been certified by their home country before they come on board. Of course, there are other forms of checks in place as well before a foreign worker gets admitted.
Thank you. Is there any others who raise a question? Because we have 5 more minutes for Q&A session. Danny?
Okay. Okay. Doesn't work. Okay. My question is for Ibu Harti because, well, even though our office is only like 2 kilometers away, but I rarely have an opportunity to have discussion with Ibu Harti. So Ibu Harti, Indonesia is an archipelagic country, and then one of our problem is about teacher distribution all over Indonesia. So connecting to what Mr. Yeo presented before, that teacher is actually the key for the quality education delivery. Then I know that government of Indonesia, MOE, push really hard so teacher study and upgrade. And then they basically can serve the students better. But what if they fail into that kind of programs and
in fact, we need to have teachers all over the country. So it is about like a quality versus distribution issues. So how do you actually manage this thing? Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Denny, for the questions. Yes, it's very important, and fortunately, we have thought about that, and we have made some transformations on the education's quality improvement, including the teachers' management and teachers' training program. We have now so-called the program Merdeka Mengajar, so learning, emancipated learning programs, a special platform for teachers to share their experience, to share their teaching and learning process, to be also learned by other teachers. So that helps so much. This platform got the what we call it in the marketplace, get the 4.9 values in the marketplace, and already 1.9 teachers already active in the platforms. So this provide opportunity for teachers in the remote area to learn, not only from the person-to-person training that is almost impossible to be given for all teachers, because we have, including those teachings in the religious schools, we have 5 million teachers, one Singaporean population in Singapore. So a lot of things that we have done, Ibu Denny, to make sure we provide better quality teachers in the areas. And some areas like in the eastern area, Papua, for example, in the islands, we have special programs. We have a Kampus Mengajar, teaching campus. So we send students from the university to be tutors in the schools in the remote areas. Thousands of students already involved in the programs, and based on the evaluations, it is proven that the programs improve the competencies of numeracy and literacies among the students in those areas. What else? We have a special literacy programs by provisions of reading materials, book, storybooks for those children in the remote areas. Last year only, we sent about 13 million copies, specials for the early child educations and also for primary schools in the remote areas, and some in the a bit urban areas, but based on the assessments, national assessment, they have very low competency in literacy and numeracy. So hoping that those programs, all programs could improve the competencies of children wherever they are, because the principles of no one left behind have to be there. We have to know specific needs of specific places and groups. And other than that, we also, starting last year, we allow the budget provided by central government that is transferred to the local governments to build boarding schools in the islands. In some islands it's difficult. We have so many small islands, but it's not easy to provide the full complete school in those islands. So cooperations, collaborations is needed, and for these issues, we also collaborate with non-government organizations and also religious organization that helping us a lot. Like in Papua, the church involved much in provisions of education, because they trust the religious, I don't know what the terms are, so very sorry, I forgot the terms. But they believe in church a lot, so we are supported by the church to provide better quality educations. And also, we also collaborate with UNICEF to provide better approach of teaching and learning process in the remote areas, and also including in Papua. We got also support from Australia through the innovations projects that helping teachers and schools to utilize whatever they have in the areas to be the teaching materials. So it doesn't have to have a complete materials, but they can use whatever they have, the trees, the garden, whatever to be used, and also to collaborate with the communities. As the school committees also helps us a lot in make sure that teaching and learning can be done in a better way. Thank you, Bu. You could check in your phone to find program Merdeka Mengajar (PMM) to show you how it works. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, teacher development is always difficult one. Even in South Korea, it's a hot topic now because of the ChatGPT and all the other technological advancement. We need to reskilling teachers and upskilling teachers too. Well, time's up, so before wrapping up this plenary, I would like to make a 3-point highlight from the speakers and the questions from the floor. Flexible learning pathway resulted in the kind of alternative learning system in each country. And every country has a different pathway for the learners who are out of school or out of formal system. So we need to enhance learner skill level and make up for the learning loss they have accumulated out of their own lives. So we need to develop an alternative system for learning. And the second one is those learners often work and learn simultaneously. So we need to respect their lifestyle and their learning outcome from the workplaces. So that resulted in our third point, because the RVA, the recognition and the validation and accreditation, is a very important policy tool to help the learner to promote their life and promote their life skills and also their employability and change their life. So thank you very much for the speakers, and thank you very much, and have a wonderful lunch.
Thank you very much. And may we have a group photo, please? Revert to the center of the stage. And yes, everyone aligned. Thank you. And at the count of 3, 2, 1, everyone say Bali. 3, 2, 1, Bali. One more. Okay. And please, we invite you to be seated. Let's give our round of applause once again to Mr. Moderator and all our honorable speakers. We do need another shot of everyone in the room. So we're requesting everyone to smile, wave. The cameraman and the videographer is ready on stage. I think this is our favorite part of the session today. Everyone is like so excited. Wave from the back. One more time, everybody. Thank you very much. Again, we do have session feedback. So please be reminded, we have a QR code for you to input the session feedback. And we also have sent the Bali Manifesto to each of your registered emails. So once again, we have sent the Bali Manifesto to each of your registered email. Please take some time to review that and give us your feedback. This is very valuable for us because tomorrow is our final day of the Inclusive Lifelong Learning Conference, and we would like to gain your valuable feedback. We await from via the email, please. So we have sent the Bali Manifesto via your email, and we would like to gain back your feedback on email as well. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a thought-provoking session throughout the morning, and we have reached the lunch break. Lunch will be served at the Grand Ballroom, where you were having luncheon also yesterday. For those of you requiring a prayer room, we have allocated the Kelungkung room for your convenience. After lunch, we will return to the parallel session, and it will be at 1:30 p.m. The parallel session at 1:30 p.m. at this Karangasem Ballroom will be workshop 3.2, Data for Monitoring and Evidence-Based Inclusive Policies in a Multi-Sectoral Governance. And the topic of national qualification frameworks is now merged with the topic of trends in adult learning and education, RPL and QF's micro-credentials, and this will be held in the Karangasem Ballroom starting at 3 o'clock. Simultaneously, the topic of intergenerational learning, pathway for continuing professional development and mobility, co-organized by ASEAN Secretary, will be held in Negara Room. Once again, simultaneously, the topic of intergenerational learning, pathway for continuing professional development and mobility, which is co-organized by the ASEAN Secretary, will be held